Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here so we can get started. Thanks for that introduction, Nicole. Really appreciate that. Can everybody see my screen okay? Great. Thanks, Mike, for the thumbs up. And I always love how when you share your screen, it bumps everything all around. So hang on one sec while okay. All right, well, Nicole said everything I was going to say. So the only other thing I want to warn you all about is I have spring fever. So our presentation is going to have a nice springy plant theme to it. So in light of that, I thought it would be fun to also share just a fun icebreaker question is, what is your favorite flower or vegetable? And so mine is a tulip. So presenting with me today is Molly Harvey. Molly, is there anything that you would like to add?
No, I think you covered it. Thanks so much, Nicole, for that intro. And I'll share my favorite flower is Lily of the Valley. I think if everyone wouldn't mind to do a quick little interactive thing, if you could put in the chat how long you've been involved with coalition work and your favorite flower or vegetable. We would love that.
Oh, I see Ellen put down lilac. Ellen, have you been to Mackinac Island for the Lilac Festival? If you haven't, I would highly recommend it. It's pretty amazing.
I haven't. It's on my list.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
I love lilacs too.
Oh gosh, I'm seeing roses and tulips and sunflowers. Nice.
22 years for Susan. Wow. It's awesome. 25 years, 20 plus years, 21 years. Thank you all for sharing that. We appreciate it.
Oh, Melissa, 2 months. Okay, I'm feeling better. I'm feeling pretty humbled about doing this presentation, just because my coalition experience at this point has only been about 4 years. I know Molly's about the same. So we feel pretty humbled to come to you and share this, knowing that there's lots of you on this that have way more experience than us. So we really welcome your input as a part of this as well. So again, like I said, I have spring fever. So I built our agenda around the plant cycle, just for the fun of it. So we're going to first talk about germination, kind of how we got started with our coalition, and then how it sprouted and the formalization of actually building a new coalition, and then growth, some of the key tasks that we hit, flowering, finally getting into that place where we're starting to be able to do some things and make an impact and see some things actually happening. And then we're not going to talk much about this because we're not there yet, but I wanted to cover it because it's part of the plant life cycle. So the fruiting or the produce portion of the plant, and then seeds. So to start off, we're going to talk about germination and how it all started with a seed of an idea.
Yeah, so I'm just going to briefly touch on this. As many of coalitions start, we started with a very small group of individuals who were starting just to notice some of the gaps in some of the programs and just services in Sheboygan County. So we brought together just a very small group of people to kind of brainstorm and come up with ideas. And one of the themes that just kept coming up was the theme of substance use and how that has impacted kind of all of us in our various different organizations and agencies. So to gain a little bit more insight into what exactly was happening with this, we started to bring people together from various different sectors of the community. And if you want to hit the next slide, Leanne. This is kind of just a great framework to go from, as many of you are probably aware of this. But for some of the newer coalitions, these are the 12 sectors of people that we started to bring together. So it's pretty straightforward. I won't read the list to you, but I'll just highlight some of these. For business, we actually had the Chamber of Commerce as our business sector representative. And as the previous slide said, this obviously took some patience and watering and reaching out to people to just kind of find the ways that they wanted to be involved and bringing them into our coalition meetings. Let's see here. School has been another huge one. One of the things that we've really worked hard to do is ensure that all schools are represented at our coalition table. So not just school administration, but also, mental health practitioners in the schools, maybe school success workers, teacher aides, things of that nature. And same with law enforcement, looking at involving local, federal and state police. And then also youth is another one that I just want to briefly highlight the importance of just having that youth voice at the table. So we actually named our coalition Pulling Together, kind of coming from that idea of, we're better together. We really want representation from all sectors. And so we're going to actually play a very short video for you that kind of encompasses a lot of the ideas that we really stand for in our coalition. So give me just a second.
Molly's going to share the video because she has faster internet than me.
Oh, and you know what? I did. Is the sound working? No, okay.
No.
I will do that one more time. I did the thing that I shouldn't have done. You have to click share sound. All right. Now. All right, I'll let Leanne share her screen again. Thank you guys for watching that short video.
Yeah, and just a side note, we saw the video after we chose our name. So, but it just really, really fits well. So let's go. So in the germination process, a seed needs a lot of things to help support it. So it needs some structure, it needs moisture, good soil, warmth, and light. So as our small group kind of discussed a variety of organizational structures, just like the video, teamwork and collaboration really resonated with us. So we really chose to become a collaboration. So just to quick, kind of define collaboration, it's the process of two or more people or organizations working together to complete a task or achieve a goal. In a collaboration, the thing that we all loved was that each organization still maintains its original identity, but it just formally recognizes that we're going to work together towards a particular goal and that no single organization bears the responsibility. So like for substance use prevention, we all have to work together to have a greater impact on our community. One of us alone can't do it. So I love this, this picture of arrows. These arrows represent different organizations. All of these organizations are doing really great things. So let's just use an example of substance use prevention work in youth. So let's say once a year, the local school holds an assembly with a special speaker who promotes remaining substance free. And maybe the media, the local media, will occasionally run an article about the dangers of substance use. And then we have church group youth leaders that every year teach a 6-week series about substance use. And then usually at the same time, the local youth center is also offering after school activities, as well as the 4-H program is offering after school activities and clubs, typically happening all at the same time. So each organization is doing a terrific job at their specific thing. Now let's just stop and imagine if these organizations were meeting together and talking about their plans and collaborating. And this is really kind of what we wanted to be able to do. So let's use that same scenario and now think about it with us all aligned and heading in the same direction. So the school is part of the coalition. So they share that they have invited a special speaker for a school assembly in February. So the media decides that during the month of January, they're going to run articles about the danger of substance use. Prior to the event, church youth group leaders, the youth center and 4-H program get together and they lay out a schedule. So the programs are not overlapping so that youth kind of have an extended time to be able to engage. They also decide that they're going to use that same special speaker and book them for the evening after the school assembly and have a launch event, which the media helps promote. They promote it at the school assembly. So now they're all working together. Everyone is kind of headed in the same direction and there's a much greater impact rather than one organization on its own doing its own thing. So I know a lot of you guys are parts of coalitions and are doing this work, but I think it's just such a great reminder of the impact we can have when we're all pointed in the same direction. So we formalized in 2018, we chose to be the Pulling Together Substance Use Prevention Coalition. And I just wanted to just briefly go over some of the steps that we took in becoming a formal coalition. Many of you are already in existence, so you probably have gone through all of this, but sometimes it's great to be reminded of this. One of the tips that we have is to not be afraid to ask the experts. So as we were talking through the process of becoming a formal coalition, MSU Extension has wonderful resources that really helped assist us in this process. So I would encourage you, even if you decide you want to kind of review some of these, reach out to your local extension because they might be able to assist you in some of this. So the first thing that we did was to develop a mission statement. This can be an overwhelming task, but my greatest tip to anybody is don't rush this process. This is a really important piece of defining the coalition, and everything you do should be measured against your mission statement. Does it align with what you're hoping to accomplish? So we kind of started out first with basic words like how we felt, and that described what we hoped to accomplish in our coalition. So our first 3 words we kind of came up with were lead, coordinate, and support. And then from this, we developed the mission statement. Now, just know that our mission statement went through lots of iterations before we got to this final one. And you'll see those 3 words are kind of in the midst of that mission statement. Once we had our mission statement in place, we then elected our official leaderships to kind of help take the lead. So with the election of officers, we established bylaws, which, bylaws are just simply those policies and procedures that determine how you're going to operate. And then finally, we really wanted good, solid consistency. So we established official meetings. Our full board meets quarterly. And then we have a steering committee that meets monthly. So an interesting thing happened during the pandemic. When we were forced to move into this crazy online world, we actually grew as a coalition. In our county, there's lots of organizations that serve our county, but don't actually have staff or offices in our county. And by going to an online virtual platform, it enabled those other organizations to all of a sudden become participants in the coalition. And so now, as we're moving out of the pandemic, we are continuing to keep a hybrid. So we're doing face-to-face as well as having it online, so that those folks that are further distance away can continue to play an active role in our coalition. So it's kind of a neat thing. When lots of things shut down and decreased in participation, we actually increased. So we're pretty thankful for that. So now that we were officially established, we started to grow. So I'm going to share a little plant science with you. I'm a little bit of a plant science geek. So I love this picture because it's a really great thing. When your little seed is germinated and sprouted, the first leaves that are formed are called, I'm sorry, I have to say this right, cotyledon leaves. So those little ones off to the side are those cotyledons. Those leaves reserve and provide nutrients through the germination process and the development of the true leaves. So the true leaves are what is really actually what the plant is going to be. So I think in this case, it's either a squash or a cucumber plant, I believe. So once the true leaves form, they're actually the ones that can do photosynthesis, and they will take over with bringing the nutrients to the new plant. So kind of a cool little fact.
Oh, that's me. Sorry about that. I thought I was on the next slide. So now we're on to fertilizing the plant. So just a couple of things I wanted to highlight about just ways that things that I feel like really, really helped us grow as a coalition. As Leanne touched on briefly, one of the biggest things was we have never been afraid to ask other people who know more than us for help and for guidance and for assistance in the work that we're doing. So one of the ways that we did that was by forming our steering committee. And as Leanne mentioned, this group meets monthly. Our large board group meets quarterly. So our steering committee, again, was similar to the large board, but a little bit of a smaller group of people who are just totally committed to our vision and mission, and who had a little bit of more time to just kind of brainstorm and dive into some of the concepts that we were working through at our larger board. And then sometimes get things a little bit more organized and then to bring back to our larger board. So the steering committee has just been extremely helpful. We have the health department on our steering committee. We have MDHHS, we've got law enforcement. So we have a religious organization. So it's the people who kind of stood up out of the larger board and said, I'm willing to dive in on some of these concepts a little bit deeper and kind of get into the nitty-gritty details. So that was one way. We consult them for so many things. And then another thing is we have reached out to other coalitions who have been in existence for longer than us. So many of you know Safe in Northern Michigan. Nicole had introduced us, and so Nicole and Susan have also been really helpful resources. They also have received a Drug-Free Communities grant for many years, kind of before we received it. And so they've just been very helpful in kind of giving us insights into spending of this funding and how to empower and motivate youth and things of that nature. So they've been great. And just to really hammer that idea home, I feel like there's no silly questions, and any question is always welcome. So just keep that in mind too after our presentation. If you do have any questions for us, feel free to reach out after And we definitely support the idea of just reaching out to each other and yeah, supporting each other. Next slide, please. So the water, to stay with the plant idea, the water for our plants has really also been funding. That's not the whole picture, but it's definitely an important component of it. So another way to nurture the growth of our coalition has been obviously through just consistently keeping our eye open for potential funding sources. So we've done that consistently since the very beginning of the inception of our coalition. And I feel like it's really served us really well. As I mentioned, one of the biggest grant projects that we worked towards was the Drug-Free Communities Grant. And this was something that we had heard about through other coalitions that we were working closely with. And it was an attractive idea to us just because of the fact that this grant is $125,000 every year for 5 years, and then you can reapply for it, and then you can get it for another 5 years. So that really stuck with our vision and mission of creating a sustainable project that would kind of grow roots and really, just kind of create a life of its own and kind of remain sustainable for years beyond our involvement with it. So we did end up working to apply for a Drug-Free Communities Grant. That was another area where we actually asked for help. We did hire a consultant who really helped do kind of the finalization of our grant application, which was extremely helpful. And I definitely recommend that to you all as well. Sometimes it's an initial financial investment or time investment, but it definitely was really helpful to us since we're busy with a lot of other things. And we did end up getting the Drug-Free Communities Grant. We just finished our first 6 months with that funding. And so we're very excited about that. Let's see what else. Let's go to the next slide. I just want to encourage you all, like I said before, to keep your eye out for funding opportunities. This is just a short list that we compiled of helpful resources and websites that you can kind of check periodically or sign up for email updates because they have some good grant stuff. Obviously, the SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, they've got a lot of good stuff there. I'll just briefly go over these. Federal Grant Resources, grants.gov. Community foundations is another great one that we often forget about. If you just do a quick Google search for your area and community foundation, oftentimes they have a tab on their website that can give you a lot of great information about funding sources. And community foundations often offer really great resources for youth too. So I'd highlight that if you're doing a youth coalition of any kind. Prevention Network, we are so grateful to receive a recent grant from them that is really going to help facilitate some of our alternative activities with youth. So keep that one in mind. And then obviously just your local PIHP, we get some grant funding through them as well.
So I heard some of you talk about this in some of the coalition updates. So I was kind of excited to hear that many of you seem to be already aware of Photovoice and that it's really a great way to have a focus group. And as we were growing as a coalition, that was one thing we really wanted the youth perspective. If we're going to talk about substance use, prevention work for youth, then who better than the youth to help us learn more about that? So we partnered with several schools, and we did this as an 8 to 10 week. So we met once a week. And so just to kind of give you an idea of what Photovoice is, it's the process in which youth kind of captured and recorded their thoughts and experiences around a particular topic through photography and stories. I've put the questions on here that we asked, but kind of our basic structure that we had was we would meet once a week. We had a professional photographer who we've been pretty blessed. They've also far donated their time. So we always had a photography component where the youth were learning about some of the basics elements of photography. So things like rule of thirds, lighting, leading lines, some of those types of things. We would introduce the question And then we would have some time where we could brainstorm ideas on how they might answer the question. So what types of photos they could take that would kind of help them with their answer. And so week one, obviously with question one, we didn't have this, but from week 2 and on, we would also then break into small groups, review the photos from the week prior's question, and we used a variety of techniques to kind of get the youth to kind of talk about those, share their thoughts. And then the ultimate goal was by the end of that to kind of write out their caption for their photos. At the very end of Photovoice, the youth would do a presentation. So depending on their school, they did it with the school board, or they might have done it with a board of directors, or just depending on, that particular location. But I wanted to share with you a couple examples of some things that the students came up with. So in this, again, the captions were written by the youth.
I'm going to read these. Alone, feeling alone or abandoned shows how I felt when I was a little girl and my mom would leave for many days to do drugs. You can feel so alone that you turn to drugs. You can't see that there are people there to help you. You may be afraid to ask for help. Having the right support system and friends helps me break this cycle and get help. The next one is up or down. When someone is in the midst of abusing a substance, it may be difficult for them to know what is up and what is down. Also, they may think the substance is bringing them up when it's really bringing them down.
All right, so since we're sharing photos, I have another one for you to look at. So if you're multitasking right now, I'm going to ask you to bring your attention back to the screen because you're only going to get to see this photo for 5 seconds. And what I would like you to do is put in the chat a word or a quick phrase of your first thoughts of this photo. Okay, if this isn't complicated, not difficult, just put in your first thoughts. So hopefully everybody is back and kind of looking. Here we go.
So I see terrifying, flood of 93, rainstorm, chaos, despair, sad, disaster, trauma, community crisis, flooding, community response, infrastructure, cold, tragic, people helping, Katrina, tragedy, trauma, being part of massive flooding. Thank you guys so much for your responses.
Yeah, thank you so much. So kind of, I'm hearing a lot of like tragic, flooding, cold, difficult times. So this was actually Hurricane Harvey, just to let you know. So it's the flooding from Hurricane Harvey. So I'm going to put the photo up again, and I want you guys to look a little deeper and see if there's other things that maybe you might notice, and just put them in the chat. And this time it will, the picture will stay there. So you have a moment to kind of just look and just see what you think. If there's other things that you notice about the picture.
I see community coming together, helpers, support, community helping, boats helping, rescue, assistance, coming together, working together. No one seems to be alone. People helping each other, people look calm, rescuers, teamwork, innovation.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. I appreciate that. So this was my fun little experiment. I wasn't quite sure how it would go. So thank you all for proving me right in my hypothesis of how this would go. So it's super easy to pick out all the negative things, right? So like your first initial response was, oh my goodness, look at this tragedy, look at this flood, look at the people out in the cold, look at the boats, look at just the devastation that's happening here. But when you get a moment to pause and look a little deeper, what I love about y'all is you're the same kind of mindset as most coalition prevention workers, is you see the positive. Right? It was great to hear all of that community coming together and innovation. And like when I look at the boats, very few of them are law enforcement or fire department. So it tells you that, this community is out, neighbors helping neighbors. And so that's kind of a cool thing to look a little deeper and see those positive things happening. So one of our main goals for our coalition that we wrote in the Drug Free Community Grant, that we as the Adult Pulling Together Coalition really see the value of youth. And so we are launching a youth-led coalition, and we are building this on a positive youth development model. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this. If you are not, it is an evidence-based model that was created by the US Department of Health and Human Services more than 30 years ago. It's when researchers and practitioners kind of identified what kept most youth on track. So here's some of the approaches they identified. And these are some of the things that, again, positive youth development, we really want to see these happening. These are strong goals for us in our youth coalition. So first and foremost, we want youth to have a sense of competence, of being able to do something well. So we're helping you see their strengths, right? So just like that photo, it was really quick to see the negatives, and some of you may be parents of teens and can really relate to how hard it can be sometimes to find a positive and a strength within a teen, but that really is our goal. We want to focus on those positive things that they have and really continue to build on it. We want them to have a sense of usefulness, having something to contribute. Youth know the challenges facing youth. Who better to contribute to helping themselves and their friends get and stay substance free, right? We're also going to utilize experiential learning. We want them to build life skills by being hands-on and learning as they're doing things. Next one is a sense of belonging, being part of a community. So we want our coalition to be one where youth, no matter where they're at, no matter what their social standing is, that they feel accepted and valued. We also want them to see how they can have a positive impact on the community around them. And then finally, a sense of power. They need to have control over their own future. And this is part of why we want to see this be a youth-led coalition. So we want to empower and train and equip these youth to lead their own coalition. This means that we have to give them an equal voice with us as adult facilitators. It's super important for us as adults to have a mindset that we're doing this with youth and not for youth. That's a very different perspective. It's really easy for us as adults to get caught in that trap of, we're doing this for youth. No, we're doing it alongside of them. We're equal partners. We're doing it with them. Also, in a youth-led organization, youth are engaged in the entire process. So we've got to train them up and equip them, but they need to be the ones that are setting the agenda and running the meetings. If they're planning a project or event, they take it all the way from brainstorming to planning to implementation. I can tell you from experience that when youth lead and you let them fully lead, it is a very powerful thing. I worked as a 4-H program coordinator, and we had a summer camp that I had a teen group that planned. And I remember the first year I did it with them, at the beginning of the year, they had this crazy idea of doing a zombie apocalypse theme where they wanted the kids to learn they wanted to learn like emergency preparedness skills. And so I came alongside of them, but they're the ones that called and set up the instructors. They're the ones that planned the games. They're the ones that set the schedule. They're the ones that lined up the volunteers to be there. They're the ones that lined up the cook to have the food ready for the meals. And then after all that work, when we got to camp, and I just can remember one of my teens standing in the middle of these kids playing some crazy game they had come up with and going, oh my gosh, 9 months ago, this was just a crazy idea. And here it is. We did it. It's so powerful when you can empower them to do that and give them control over their own future. So just a reminder, kind of our key things that we want for our youth coalition is that we're at the core of it is positive youth development. We want a lot of hands-on experiential learning, and we absolutely want it to be youth-led.
And just to conclude, as Leanne mentioned, we really are kind of in the beginning stages of seeing the flowering and the producing and the seeds. But we are really hopeful as to the direction that we're going. And we're, like I mentioned earlier, just really excited to build something that's going to be sustainable, empower the youth and the adults that are part of our coalition to continue to be a part of it, recruit other people, and yeah, just continue to create positive community change in Sheboygan. So as I mentioned earlier, please feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. I just did notice we had 2 new views on our Pulling Together Facebook. So I just want to say we're not super active on there, but we are in the process of building it. That's another area where we really want to see the youth kind of take initiative. So yeah, feel free to email us. And if you have any questions, we're open.
Thank you very much for the presentation. We have some minutes for some questions. I'm going to stop.